impact some customers, but we were able to resolve that fairly quickly. Unrelated to the stage 2 work, on November 21st, we did have a power failure at Lion Station. This failure was linked to our UPS, or uninterrupted power supply, which caused some issues with the power within the station itself. RTM has identified what the rectification is taking steps to ensure it doesn't happen again. While this happened, though, service did continue along the entire line. But however, until the power was restored to the station, we introduced what we called a skip stop. So the train went through the station, wasn't able to let people on, wasn't able to let people off at the station, and we had to close down the station for that period of time. We did offer R1 service through the downtown core to help people who wanted to either disembark or embark at that station. And lastly, on December 3rd, there was a safety concern with a passenger at Tunney's Passenger Station, which led to our trains not being able to come into the station and safely dock. Our special constables were able quickly to respond to the situation. However, in an effort to minimize the impacts to our customers, we did implement a few R1 trips just to keep people moving as best we could. Once our special constables were able to interact with the individual and get them to a safe place, service resumed into that location, and there was minimal delays for our customers. Next slide, please. Le service de bus conventionnel a réalisé 97,4 de services fournis pour le mois, en hausse par rapport au mois d'octobre. Il y a eu des augmentations constantes depuis septembre de cette année, mais nous n'avons pas atteint notre objectif de 99,5%. Les initiatives de recrutement et de flotte se poursuivent afin d'améliorer la fiabilité et nous aider à atteindre notre objectif. Conventional bus service achieved 97.4 of the service delivered for the month, up from the month of October. We have been seeing some slow and steady increases since September of this year, but we recognize that we haven't achieved our goal of 99.5%. We're continuing with our recruitment and fleet initiatives previously discussed, and that will assist in that will get us to our point where we can achieve our objectives of getting to 99.5. Next slide, please. So as I just mentioned, bus service was 97.4 planned service delivered, which left approximately 2.6 or 204 of approximately 8,200 trips undelivered for the month of November. Approximately 45% of all undelivered trips are a result of on-street adjustments due to issues such as general traffic, congestion, and detours. This is down from 51% in October. Service undelivered due to fleet availability, when you look at combining the orange and the yellow pies on the chart that you see there, is approximately 20%, 21%, which is down from 22% in October. And operator resources are accounting for approximately 34% of undelivered trips, which is up compared to 28% in October. The top 3 routes experiencing the highest number of undelivered trips remains unchanged: the Line 2 replacement bus service and routes 11 and 12. With that said, though, we have seen improvements with these routes in November. Route 12 experienced a 2.3 increase in delivered trips. Route 11 experienced a 4.4% increase in delivered trips. And Line 2 experienced just a marginal improvement of 0.4% increase in delivered trips compared to October. And I'll just end off by saying I know that in previous Transit Commission, Councillor Lowe asked for additional information with regards to the breakdown of the bus service delivery and the reliability, and we're working to provide that in the new year. Next slide, please. Le graphique à l'écran concerne les itinéraires de bus qui circulent moins fréquemment que toutes les 15 minutes. Ce tableau montre le pourcentage d'arrivées aux arrêts principaux où le bus n'avait ni plus d'1 minute d'avance ni plus de 5 minutes d'avance sur l'heure prévue. Vous pouvez constater que la fonctionnalité de ces itinéraires a varié entre 72 et 75% au cours de la dernière année. Il reste stable pour le mois de novembre à 93%. As well, just similar to my previous slide, as mentioned at the last TC, we're still working on the best metric to report on on-time performance for trains and for bus routes that operates with similar frequencies. Where evenly spaced and regularity of service can be more important to customers than the exact time of arrival. So we're still working on that, and we'll have more information on that in the new year. Next slide, please. We move on into ridership at this point. So ridership for the month of November is still being finalized, so we don't have that to present today. We will circulate the November data via memo when the information is available, but I am able to provide an update on the October ridership. So as mentioned in the memo that was issued on November 28th, ridership for the month was 6.4 million customer trips, representing a 15% increase from October of last year and a 3% decrease from September of this year. Ridership for the 12 months ending October 2023 was 1.3% higher than the 12-month period ending a month earlier at 62.5 million trips. We'll continue to monitor and report on ridership levels and on ridership recovery trends. And as I mentioned, we will issue a memo with regards to the November ridership when that information is available. And then the last slide is fare revenue for Line 1 and conventional buses. Budgeted fare revenue for the O train and conventional bus service for the month, November, was 15.6 million. Fare revenue, so that was the budgeted fare revenue was 15.6 million. Fare revenue actually achieved for the month was 13.7, up from 13.3 in 2022. So I believe at this point that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you. Merci.
Okay, thank you very much. Merci, René, Matthew, Joel, Amanda, Roya, pardon me, Richard, Paul, and Troy. It's an extensive update. Lots going on with OC Transpo. We don't have any delegations, so we will go straight to questions for staff from committee members. And Councillor Hill is first up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to recount a story. Yesterday, I was traveling on the 270 North at 7:24 in the morning. We were on Woodruff. We went through green light on Medhurst Drive when a small red Nissan cut through illegally through east to west on that site. Our driver, Cash was his name, hit the brakes, but he did so in a somewhat gentle way, angled the bus away from the Nissan and avoided a collision. And it was purely based on the skill of his driving that we didn't have something fairly terrible happen. I spoke to him after, I gave him some appreciation, but I just want to highlight publicly the great work that our drivers do and the training system that you guys provide so that you can keep our riders safe. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you, and thank you to staff for the presentation today. Mr. Holder's presentation touched upon the nut pinning testing that is about to happen early in the new year. And I'm seeking clarification on what exactly are we looking for during the test? What are you measuring or studying to ensure that you are then satisfied to put all the cars into service?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. So the testing will occur in two main phases and is pretty extensive. So the first element of the testing involves an assessment of new hubs, which have been provided by Texelis, the manufacturer, to Alstom, that will be retrofitted with the pins. So they are now in the country. They are being fitted to one particular LRV in 3 locations on 3 of the bogies. Once we have those new axles fitted with the nut pinning, we will run that vehicle as an out-of-service vehicle on the line during regular service, but not carrying passengers, and we will run 1,500 kilometers on that vehicle. We will then do a strip down. We will look at the hub. We will do measurements of the we call there's a whiplash measurement. There is a wheel back-to-back measurement, and there is a pry bar test measurement that is part of the containment that is currently in place through Alstom's safety note. And we will check, are there any anomalies associated with those particular measurements? In addition to that quantitative testing, we will be tracking every day the progress of that vehicle. We'll be making sure that an operator reports back on any particular anomalies that they are experiencing with the vehicle, with the train control system, with the onboard propulsion system, whether there's any vibrations detected. And the basis of us being able to say we are comfortable to continue with the testing will be we've had no anomalies, we don't see anything untoward, and that the quantitative measurements that have been taken are within the criteria, within the thresholds that have been set by Alstom. So that's phase one, which is on new hubs. We will also be retrofitting hubs that have achieved the 60,000 kilometer, and we will be providing nut pinning to those vehicles, those axles and those vehicles. We will then begin phase two testing, which is having those vehicles running as a test train without passenger service, and we'll be running those for a period of up to 30,000 kilometers over several weeks, so that we have a longer period to assess any potential degradation in the axle hub assembly.
That's very good. Thank you for that explanation. And at no time during the testing phase will passengers be on the trains. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we will run the 1,500 kilometers on the vehicle that is fitted with new axles and pins without passengers.
Okay.
And it's only until we've made that assessment that we will allow that vehicle to then go into service.
Okay, fair enough. Switching gears completely to the route review, can we just get an update on, since the last meeting, you've probably continued to refine the final set of modifications to routes based on input, not just from the public, but members of the commission and council. When will OC Transpo make a final decision on the modifications to bus routes?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, we've been working very hard over the past couple of months, refining what we brought to commission, working very closely with councillors, taking on additional feedback from the public. We are working through the planning and scheduling phase right now. We're currently ascertaining our timelines. We're working through our deliverables, and all that to say we anticipate having a more firm date of implementation in the new year.
Okay, thank you. Will a revised list and set of maps be provided to Transit Commission members at some point, and when can we see that?
Chair, yes, absolutely. We're currently working through the document. I actually got an update from my team yesterday that the document is currently 16 gigabytes in size with all the maps. So we're looking to reduce the size and make it a little bit more palatable, but we're certainly working through that, and we'll have something out to councillors and commissioners
That's
very
great.
soon.
Okay, thank you. My last question, Chair, is a term that I have mixed up more than once in the public, and I take full ownership for this, and that is the difference between bus service delivery and on-time performance. Two completely different metrics. My understanding of bus service delivery is OC Transpo's ability to get that bus out and run, that scheduled run from point A to point B. And on-time performance is whether it's within that very small window of 5 minutes, if it's adhering to the schedule. Madam Amical, your objective is to get bus service delivery to 99.5%. What's your objective for on-time performance, which is nowhere near 99.5%?
Without any manifestations, non-planned manifestation in downtown, 85%.
Okay, so we're aware, and that is still part of the same, you've listed some steps that you're going to take to get us towards the 99.5% as far as delivery. Same type of objectives to get us to the on-time performance, or is there anything different that you need to do to address the other matter?
Chair, the answer is yes.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, I appreciate the update, and I'll continue to listen to my colleagues' questions. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. In the little section that was where you talked about the storm schedule that's being implemented, I noticed that it's at 39 hours and 87 hours, depending on the day when it's going to be activated. Is that like an activation internally for the next, and then it'll be a public facing the next service day, or might customers suddenly have a change from a regular weekday schedule to that enhanced Saturday schedule midday on a Thursday or something?
So I can speak to the lead time required. The main driver of the lead time required is to inform the bus operators that they're going to be working on their alternate schedule, as well as implementing all of the changes into the system, or all of our various scheduling systems. That's the amount of lead time that's required. In terms of communications, once we've locked into that, that's when our communications will start to go out across all of the various channels.
So there would be no scenario where the level of service changes midday for the customer.
And that's correct.
Okay.
So once we've locked into the winter storm schedule, it's locked in for that entire service day.
Thank you. And in terms of the proactive suspension, partial or full suspension of line 1 on days with extreme weather, what's the threshold, or have you established any sort of definition of what that extreme weather may be?
With regards to line 1, we know that the trains handle very, very well the snow conditions, and actually in most situations when it's snowing, we want the trains to continue running because they do help to keep the tracks and then the infrastructure clear of any sort of buildup. When it comes to the ice accumulation, we don't have a specific threshold, but what I can share is once if it's forecast, or well, if we start to see if the forecast is pushing towards the upper limits of the design specifications, that's when we'd be considering that making those changes. Or alternatively, as Joel's outlined, we will have field staff and RTM will be doing their observations through the control center as well as on the field. If we're starting to see some electrical anomalies, those types of things, that's when we would respond and react at that time.
Okay, thank you very much. And going into the introduction of live bus data at first stops, so at terminals at first stops period, including terminals like Tunney's and Herdman and all of that. Does that take into if a customer texts 560, or they look at the screen and it shows that the bus says, coming in 6 minutes with the little asterisk, does that factor in the recovery time that would be in the schedule, or is that just based on purely on the bus's geographic location?
Sorry, if I could clarify, do you mean if there's let's say a layover in between trips?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it will factor that into account.
Okay, and then let's say that bus pulls into Tunney's pasture or some terminal like with a loop late, and it drops off its customers late to the point where it's lost its recovery time, and it drops off its customers and then has to proceed past its first stop. The operator wants to go to the washroom or something. Will that has that been factored into the technology so that it doesn't register, or so that to the customer it doesn't show as, oh, my bus passed, but I didn't see it go by?
I think I would have to confirm in that
Okay.
specific scenario, but if it passes the first stop and the system registers that it has serviced the first stop, and the bus is signed on to the trip, then I think it would assume that, yeah, I'm at the first stop and I've passed. But given that the real-time location is being shared on the app anyway, the customer would see that the bus is still there at the station.
Yeah, I think on the transit app, I understand that, but I'm thinking if somebody texts 560, or sees it and looks at it on the screen exclusively at the station, right? They're not going to know that. It'll just
That's right.
disappear, and lo and behold, the bus is actually sitting there in the layup, right? So that's I think a consideration worth considering.
Yes.
Sorry. Oh, okay. Last question. In terms of the canceled trips, I know that earlier in the year you had mentioned, I think I asked a question or somebody asked a question, and you had responded and said that the canceled trips that are presented are full canceled trips, right? From terminal to terminal, or does that include somehow partial canceled trips, like where it's Tunney's to a midpoint?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mr. Councilor. It includes all canceled trips, full and partial.
Full and partial?
Yeah.
Okay, so even a partial trip would be counted as one full canceled trip in that data.
That's correct. Our control center tracks both
Okay.
the partials as well as the fulls, and we're reporting on.
Cool, okay. Well, that kills the rest of that question. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the updates. I'm glad to hear about the transit app. It's something we were talking about a lot in the last term of council. And it was coming, you know, to update it and it was still being done by hand, the inputting. And so I'm glad to hear of all the updates. I wanted to know how many riders are using it. You gave numbers about how many hits you have, but do you know percentage of how many riders actually use the app?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for the question. The table does show the number of unique riders who opened the app, the transit app in the month of October. So that was roughly 95,000.
95,000
Yeah.
persons. Okay. I wonder if, you know, what demographics are using it. And I was concerned about older adults. I'm the liaison on older adult issues. And I just want to make sure that they're knowing about the app. Sometimes people just don't hear about things. They just do what they've always been doing. It would be very helpful that people wouldn't have to go to the bus stop too early if it's cold out, if it's not going to come. Do we sort of look into that just in terms of the demographics and perhaps maybe even give help to people to learn how to use it or install it?
Thanks for the question, Chair. I don't believe we track demographics of downloads of the app. It's certainly something we can look into. It may be difficult because users would have to self-declare somewhere in the process. As far as communicating, I would have to pass that on to one of our comms staff.
Okay. All right, thank you. Did you want to reply?
All right. Yes, Mr. Chair. I think that's an interesting idea to explore. We can certainly look into the feasibility of exploring some sort of an orientation materials for older adults in terms of helping them orient to the app. So that's something we can definitely look into for next year.
Yeah, no, I think it would be helpful to make sure it's being it's not assumed that everybody just knows how to use things. And as you know, there's a lot of seniors out there taking the bus, and it would be very helpful. I'm looking forward to having better statistics on reliability. We had for 3 days in a row, the same bus was a no-show, and it concerned me, and we report them all to OC Transpo immediately to the counselor services. But because it was 3 days in a row, it was the 87 and it was a morning for someone trying to get to work. I did pass it on, Madame Alcar and to Pat Scrimger, just so you know, because that really concerned me because like, what is the pattern there? Why that particular route? It's one of the core routes that, you know, I've talked to Pat extensively about the core routes we want to keep for changes and don't want to mess with it because it's a reliable commuter route. What would be a pattern like that? It really concerned me.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la question. L'enjeu que nous avons, on le sait, c'est la fiabilité, puis on travaille encore dessus. C'est un enjeu sur du long terme, malheureusement. C'est pas un enjeu que demain on va régler. Ça fait déjà 1 an et demi qu'on travaille à recruter des nouveaux chauffeurs, puis on voit que on n'arrive jamais à prendre le dessus parce qu'on est encore dans les mêmes niveaux qu'on avait besoin en 2022. On est encore là-dessus. On est heureux quand même parce qu'on voit une amélioration à ce niveau-là, mais c'est toujours un recommencement. Et au niveau de la maintenance des autobus, on fait face à des enjeux aussi. Je l'ai mentionné la dernière fois quand je suis venue ici à la commission de transport. Entre autres, on sait que les autobus articulés qui étaient dus pour être mis à la retraite, malheureusement, on doit les conserver dû au fait que le programme e-bus est retardé par, on le sait, on a eu les enjeux avec Infrastructure Canada. Après ça, on est venu consulter le conseil, puis on a perdu plusieurs mois précieux à ce niveau-là. La bonne nouvelle, c'est qu'on a un plan qui est solide et ça va me faire plaisir au mois de février, lorsque nous aurons notre commission de transport. Je vais venir encore vous partager le plan et où est-ce qu'on est rendu dans le plan. Mais c'est vraiment un plan à long terme. J'apprécie les fois que vous ou d'autres de vos collègues, vous m'apportez les enjeux parce que ça me le rappelle davantage, mais je vous assure que je n'ai même pas besoin de ce rappel parce que c'est quelque chose qui est inné chez moi personnellement. Je veux délivrer un bon service pour nos clients. Et sachez que tous les matins, de 8 h à 9 h, je rencontre toute mon équipe de direction. On fait une revue du service qui a été livré la veille et on fait un plan pour savoir qu'est-ce qui s'en vient aujourd'hui, quels sont les enjeux avec lesquels on devra faire face, pour qu'on puisse voir si on peut apporter ne serait-ce qu'un petit plan journalier pour justement faire face à tout ça. Donc, on continue à travailler dans ce sens, mais en même temps, on a un plan sur du long terme que je vais partager, comme j'ai dit, avec vous en début d'année prochaine.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I hesitate to do, share those things with you because you're the counselor liaison for OC Transpo is very good, but it's just when there was a pattern, it really concerned me. And I had to bring it to attention before route changes. I want to make sure everybody knows. So appreciate it. In terms of the winter storm days, I'm assuming if communications that there'll be announcements to counselors to get the message out, just like, the parking bans and everything else that we do around here. We get messages out really quickly so that we know that we can tell everybody, hey, looks like tomorrow's going to be a winter storm day, and for those taking the bus, so they know. Is that the plan, to make sure you pass it on to counselor offices?
That, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
That's correct. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Like my colleagues, I'm watching closely on the route review and appreciate the discussions with Pat and team on this, and we'll continue to work on changes that we know of so that you may not know of. For example, the 58 in Crystal Beach area, we're going to have a transitional housing out there where 170 rooms are going to be filled with families. So it's good for you to know that you're going to possibly have more customers because the population of that area is just going to grow overnight. So those are the kinds of things that we'll update you with. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chair. Et puis, merci beaucoup pour la présentation. Je poserai une série de questions différentes et puis je m'excuse en avance si ces questions ont déjà reçu une réponse lors de réunions précédentes. I sometimes lose track of all the information. My first question is with respect to the on-demand pilot that's beginning. I know we've discussed this before. I'm wondering if while you're constructing the app and working on that, if there's a way to track the feedback of users so that we have an idea as to why the users are using the trip, what the purpose of the trip is, if they own a car, for example, the ages, if they identify with a disability, if they would have used paratranspo. Is there any thought to collecting that data as part of the app so that we can continuously monitor on demand?
So, Chair, we certainly get the origin and destination data through the app. Anything more than that, we would need to work with our software provider to add new layers and add these questions. I think it would be very useful, and it's something we can certainly take away and discuss with them to see what might be feasible.
Okay, great, thanks. Because this is a pilot, and we do intend to roll it out further in the future should it be successful. I think that sort of data would be really useful. With respect to the update on Herdman receiving 9 shelters and Tunney's receiving 14 shelters, and I think that's great. I know there was a lot of disappointment when the temporary scaffolding would be removed. Do we have any update at the time, and I probably have this in my email, about adding benches there as well, particularly at Herdman where the length is quite long?
Chair, I don't know if Jim Greer is online. Maybe he knows the answer. Otherwise, we'll come back to you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. I realize that's a pretty low level discussion. I just saw it up on the slide and got really excited.
Oh, Councillor Carp, looks like Mr. Greer is
Yes,
online.
yes.
Oh.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. Yes, we work closely with Pat Scrimger's team and Matt Wallstrom, who's there now to look at the seating in the bench areas and the actual pathway walkways of the transit station. So once we get the stations up at Herdman, we can definitely look at the benches and anything that's required.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that update, Mr. Greer. With the free New Year's Eve service, is that sponsored by anyone, or do we actively seek sponsors to cover the costs of that? Can we just give me a refresher on that? I know that's been answered before. I
can respond to that, Mr. Chair. It is sponsored. It is sponsored by Mothers Against Driving and Safer Roads Ottawa. So that represents the bulk of the costs for that event for us.
Okay, so it's sponsored by sort of not-for-profit type organizations and not business organizations.
It could be sponsored by anybody, but yes, but at this
But
time
this
it's sponsored
particular
by
case.
these nonprofit organizations. That's correct.
Okay, and they come voluntarily every year, or do you seek that out?
We seek that out.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Next question. This is a really low level question, but I'm curious what you collect points for on the transit app. And I did just download it after the presentation, but what do you collect the points for?
Points are when you enable a Go trip and you help other users with your real-time information. So there's a leaderboard for.
Okay, so it's just points to
Yeah.
like online. Okay.
It's a fun feature.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. With respect to the red light infractions and the fact that they're kind of higher than we would like them to be, how are those tracked specifically? Like, are they tracked because you receive a red light ticket, or how are we aware of the red light infraction?
Thank you, Chair. So the red light infractions, that information comes to us via another department from within the city. I believe it's from Fleet Safety. And we maintain a tally, an ongoing tally as to the numbers and the locations of these red light infractions that are occurring.
Okay, excellent. So they're not intentionally targeting the OC transport buses, but we're receiving that as a factor, like as a subsequent factor to the fact that they've run. Like it's not a program to specifically for the buses. The city just sends in the information.
Yes, that's correct. It's just a result of the fact that those intersections are equipped with red light cameras. And when the conditions present themselves to activate the red light camera, and it happens to be a bus, then that is that information is captured and it's reflected in the ticket.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And then just one last question for now. On paratranspo and service improvements, I saw something this morning, I think probably on a chat board or social media, about sort of a trial of texting, SMS messaging for rides. Can anybody speak to me about that, or maybe I misunderstood that?
Mr. Chair, I'll have to come back with some information on that. I don't have enough information to give you an answer right now, but I'll take that away.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I have a few questions. Thank you very much for the Herdman shelters. That's a response to several months ago when obviously the issue was raised about shelter for residents at that station. So that's great to see. Is there an approximate date, timeline, just even a month that might be implemented that we know of? And I saw it's at Tony's too. It's great news.
Jim, do you have the date, please?
Yes, I do, Renee. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair. The shelters are still currently, they're ordered, they're arriving, they're as we speak, they're starting to take inventory in. And once we get through the holiday season, pending the weather, we'd be looking at end of January, mid-January, end of January. It'll take a few weeks to get them all installed and that, but I would say we should have them all up and running by end of January, February timeline.
In that winter period. That's great to hear. Thanks for that. And at Herdman, the 9 shelters, do you anticipate that's going to be enough to meet the capacity there? Obviously, that station gets pretty full.
Chair, I can answer this question. We believe so, because we still have a lot of capacity inside, right? And we will have we'll have those shelters. And if we see that we need more, we can work on it. But we believe that we're okay.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I'll just reiterate Councillor Carr's ask for some more benches there. Very helpful, and hopefully a small investment, but good quality of life piece for residents. The other issue that had come up at Herdman previously was the replacement of trees. I'm wondering how that's going. Have we been proactively replacing trees there, and are they taking?
I can answer that question. Yes, we have had problems with the trees when they first went in, and we've actually contracted with a landscaping company that they've been replacing the trees, and in the springtime we'll be adding some additional trees in and keeping a very close eye on that. But definitely heading in the right direction there.
Okay. Thanks so much for that. My next question is around the implementation date on the route review. I know this was raised by Councillor Brockington. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was that the route review changes would not be implemented until line 2 was running and open.
Chair, it's not firm like that. I would love that. However, if we are ready with the Trilum line and we're not ready with the route review, we'll launch the service for sure. And we have a schedule expressively for the line 1 without the line 2, sorry, 2 and 4 without the route review, because if you remember, we were prepped to launch this year before the route review, so we can apply this schedule if we need it. But for sure, for me, that would be fantastic if we could implement the both in the same time. However, there is a lot of job to do. We want to make sure that we captured all of the info. Councillor Kavanagh just shared with us some very good info. So we have to make sure, because we need a success with this route review.
No, I agree, and I appreciate that. I guess just to put some clarity on it, the route review changes, though, couldn't be implemented before the line 2 is launched, because they play off of each other for some of those routes and the connectivity up with that new line, just to get confirmation that ideally they happen together. But the actual route review itself, those changes need line 2 operational. Is that correct?
Chair, for clarity, we can launch the service without the route review. We cannot implement the full route review without the lines 2 and 4.
Perfect. Okay, thank you for that clarity. There was something mentioned in the presentation around proactive suspensions on line 1 for winter. And I'm just wondering what that looks like. What is the criteria for proactive suspensions? Because I know we were talking about running more trains more frequently through the night if there's, say, ice buildup. Obviously, the winter conditions, we want the line running. But what would proactive suspensions look like in the case of winter weather?
Thank you for the question, Chair. It will be case by case. A lot of monitoring, I would say. In January this year, unfortunately, we had to deal with the freezing rain, and we came here and we were very frank. We missed the boat for sure, because we could do more and definitely better. In April, we did what we had to do, and unfortunately, we saw what happened as well, but it was Quebec and Ontario were in the same pattern. So based on that observation, we will put in place a team that we will monitor very each hour to make sure that we don't have people stuck on the train between stations, etc. So we'll give heads up for sure to council prior to this decision. But the intent here today is to share with you that this is something that we have on our radar, and we are planned for that. But I think my colleagues shared as well. We have implemented a lot of things this year. The ice, the anti-ice buildup. We have this diesel tow to help us toward vehicles, and a lot of things that we will continue to do to avoid cutting the service. However, I don't want to take any risk with our passengers and having them stuck in between station in the LRVs. So that's why we want to bring this today to you, to tell you that if it's needed for safety reason, we could do that, but that doesn't mean we will do it. We will do our max for sure to be able to deliver the service.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. I just have two more local, but they involve several wards, two local issues kind of to raise. So Bank Street capacity issues. This obviously affects many wards in that north-south connection. I heard from a whole lot of residents, riders on Tuesday, December 5th about service that had been, I guess, pretty horrendous for a lot of people. So it's a major north-south connection. We're hearing consistently about Bank Street capacity issues with the 6 and the 7. There was buses, I guess, canceled that day, overcrowding, a lot of angry passengers in -17 weather, and they were told to contact their counselors, because there's several counselors along this route. But I'm just wondering what happened, and how do we make sure that capacity on that essential north-south artery is there in the future, whether it be through the route review or increased capacity as we see the need when students return. It's been a challenge on Bank Street, because that ridership has really returned. Though we don't have full ridership across the city, that ridership on the 6, 7 in that area is really full a lot of times.
Well, thank you for the question. It's a combination of factors for sure. We have had a few, when we get into the winter season, especially into December, we do see some increase in traffic in certain areas, and it caused some additional delays to our buses, and that can cause, when you see sometimes some bunching of buses, and some can also result in some trips undelivered and cancellations due to extreme lateness of buses. So you got that factored in. We did have a day where with through the downtown core, there was a protest going on that impacted a lot of routes that were trying to travel through the downtown core. So that impacted one of the days. And then as well, just, as we've been talking about, the reliability that we were experiencing right now is not where we want to be. We're at that 97.4%. We want to be at 99.5. So unfortunately, when we're struggling with service on certain days, our control center, have to manage as best possible, and they have to make some difficult decisions as to what trips we can't deliver and communicate to our customers. So it is a combination of factors. The next steps for us are, we've got the route review, which we'll be looking at capacity as well. We do have our seasonal adjustments that our planning and scheduling teams look at, and they look at what they're seeing in terms of the ridership and the capacity, and where we need to make adjustments with either frequency or even, bus types. And then, then the control center is making ongoing adjustments to try to rectify where we see those chronic issues. So we know the Bank Street is a key area. We know it's a busy area. We try to avoid those cancellations on those routes as much as possible. But until we get our reliability up, it's one of those things that we just need to keep trying to manage and minimize the impact.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Chair. And just the last question is around the Carlton Vincent Massey pedestrian bridge. It affects 2 wards, but obviously more connections through there for students. We've been waiting a long time to get that up and running. I know we continue to get updates. Thank you to staff for those updates, but be remiss if I didn't raise that it's really behind schedule from when it was anticipated to open. So people are anxious. They've seen that bridge in for a while. I know there's a few remaining works. Just an update, if you can, on that, and when you anticipate it actually opening. I know it's not scheduled to be winter maintained, but this could be an issue. And I know we're trying to get a ski trail extended through there. There is major connection points there for students and people that work at Carleton University. And this is something that we could, work on together to say, yeah, I know the NCC is on the other side, but even if it's a ski trail, maintaining it open for that, as we're hopefully going to see with other bridges in Ottawa that have been controversial. This is an important connection piece. So I just want to know an update on that and timing for that bridge.
Mr. Chair, the remaining work on that bridge is the electrical connection for the lighting, as well as the handrails on the actual bridge itself. That work, we tried to get it in before the end of the year, but it's been postponed into the new year. So we're probably looking at January to get those handrails installed on the bridge. Obviously, that's a safety feature. We need that. At that point, we can make a decision about whether to chain it off or to leave it open for people to access the southern side of the bridge.
Okay, I hope we do not chain it off and that there is capacity to allow for things like ski trails or others who may want to snowshoe over. It's a fantastic connection, but why build a bridge if it's only going to be open for some months of the year? Hopefully we can open it for all months of the year. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you very much, Chair Gower. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. The first one on the marketing strategy. I recognize the importance of our safety marketing. My comment would be that I believe that we should focus our marketing resources on two things. I think it should focus on gridlock on the highway, and I think it should focus on parking costs downtown. And I think both of those things would bring us riders. And I just wanted to see from OC Transpo if those are on the agenda, or if that's something perhaps that subsequently I need to bring as a direction or something to that effect, because I just want to make sure that of the scarce resources we're investing into marketing, that we're hitting the button that's going to give us the most bang for buck.
Mr. Chair, I think it's important to keep in mind that the goal of our safety campaign, which is to get the creative in front of as many people, but our safety campaign was really geared around safety issues that had been highlighted by our chief safety officer and his team. It doesn't necessarily interfere with the marketing that we are doing, and certainly the issues that you've brought up will be on the floor of consideration for next year.
Thank you very much. I was hoping to hear an update on the Cantangle question that I had at the last couple of transit commissions in terms of the tight turns at Herdman. Is there an update, or are we going to hear on that in the near future?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, for the question. I think the previous update that I provided, I'd indicated that a survey had been undertaken, and we were doing analysis of the results from that survey, and we were hoping to come back before Christmas, so around now. Unfortunately, the data that we have looked at from that survey seems to be corrupted. The survey needs to be reinitiated. So that will take place in January. So that unfortunately, there's a delay with coming back with that information, but hopefully later in January, we'll be able to come back with that detail on the track cant in the curves.
Okay, thank you for that. And my last question, with regard to the wheel hub pinning process, I guess I wanted a little bit more fidelity on the testing process. I'm assuming the testing process is looking at the metal integrity once we've punctured a hole into it, which it wasn't originally designed to have. But is this going to test it under circumstances where, there's vertical pressure being applied to this that simulates those curves where there's the lateral forces, or is it simply, applying pressure vertically straight down? I just a little bit of clarification, I guess, so that I understand the testing process. Obviously, the reason I'm asking is because the last thing I would want is for us to, in the search of a solution to this problem, be in fact creating an integrity problem within these wheel hub assemblies and making it more unsafe. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for the question. So the testing that I described earlier on is referring to the in-field testing, and it is not the first element of testing that has taken place. So the first element that was the first part of the testing was undertaken by the axle manufacturer itself, by Texelis, and so they did do several trials of the nut pinning technology, the process to drill the holes. They have done an assessment of the strength of the materials. Has there been any degradation in the strength of the materials? Are there any stresses induced by the holes that have been placed into the nuts and pasted into the assembly? And so all that testing campaign was undertaken several weeks ago. And when I referred to the analysis that the city has been undertaking with RTG and with TRA, it's related to the assessment of the results that have come in from that testing. So we have just been able to provide the go-ahead for the installation of the pins based on all the testing that has been done by the manufacturer with the supervision of Alstom and RTG and TRA.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, thanks very much. And sorry for coming back on the list. Something I want to highlight in the presentation from today, compared to September, is we had 204 trips that were canceled, compared to 291 in September. So that's certainly an improvement from then. The statistic that was most interesting to me, though, is in September, 16% of those canceled trips were because there were no buses, whereas this month it was 7%. So, and back in October, when the September stuff was presented, you had noted that, within about a month from that date of Transit Commission, that the maintenance side of things for buses would have stabilized, right? So do you consider 7% of trips canceled due to no bus being that kind of stability that you were looking for?
Chair, no. For me, it's 0.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, my next question then is going back on the proactive suspensions of line 1 in case of extreme weather. Because it's proactive, is it fair for me to assume that this will not affect the payments for RTG? Like, let's say there's enough extreme weather where there's, where we're proactively suspending service that goes below the service delivery threshold.
Chair, the answer is that should not affect the payment to RTG based on the decision that we will take together proactively. However, we will never pay for non-deliverable kilometers. So if we don't run the trains, we will not pay for the kilometers because we won't have any. However, some payments will need to be done because it's normal, because it will be our decision.
Yeah, so that was it's because it's our decision, because it's proactive. Like, we can't penalize somebody for something that we decided, right? I kind of want to build a little bit on what Councillor Hill asked about the nut pinning. When the trains are being tested out of service, is it just going to be the dead weight of the vehicles, or are we going to put water barrels into them to kind of simulate a partially loaded train or fully loaded train?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the vehicles will be loaded to AW2 for the purpose of the out of service testing.
And that represents?
That's full load.
Okay.
So we have AW1, AW2, AW3. AW3 would be considered to be crush load. But what we experience in regular peak service would be the AW2 loading.
Okay, thanks very much. And for me, I'd also would be remiss if I didn't poke at this again. Is there any chance of us seeing the Alstom report?
Chair, unfortunately, the answer is no. However, as I said, RTG will report to this Transit Commission a condensed report with the findings, with the root cause, and the sustainable solution.
Okay, and when will that report be available?
We're still working on it, but for sure, before the end of next year, for sure. But I hope that will be sooner, but the intent is to have it before next year, before the end of next year.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair. This is something from the last session, one of our commissioners had asked about ads in transit stations, and I just wonder where that ended up. I actually bumped into Mr. Caricato and he was asking me about it, and I said, I don't know. This was something that we had passed, but is that still being activated?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. The ads in transit stations are beginning now. We've just recently, 11 stations downtown have been taken over, if you will, by the Ottawa Senators. So we have ads running and murals running throughout those, and we will be encouraging more and more advertising throughout the transit system, both on lines 1 and line 2 and 4 when those open up.
Great. So is that a significant source of revenue for us?
No,
No?
Mr. Chair, not significant. I mean, we're in the process right now of exploring our advertising, sponsorship, and business development plans to see how we can augment that and really start to increase the revenue that we get from that. But it will never be a system in which advertising and sponsorship can fund transit altogether. So it's right now it represents a very small portion of our revenue. We're hoping to increase it to between $8 and $10 million.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I understand Roya has an update on one of the issues that came up earlier in the discussion.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was to Councillor Kavanaugh's question about demographic data. So staff has let me know that we do have information on who uses the app through a survey that's performed through the app quarterly. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I wanted to correct that. Yes, we do have a sight into the age groups of users of the app.
Can that be shared when you have that available? Sent
Yeah, we
around?
can certainly bring that in a future meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm seeing no more questions. I just wanted to say thank you to OC Transpo staff again for organizing this year's food drive to support local food banks. It was great to see so many OC Transpo staff, staff from councillors' offices, staff from across city departments participating, and great result with the amount of donations coming in. Also appreciated staff's support for the on-demand. I know Matthew mentioned that staff did allowed Councillor Dudas and I to go along for a ride along, but there were also members from local community associations. And I think they were quite happy with having that demonstration and provided some good feedback for staff to consider. And very happy to see the real-time info through transit and other ways that customers can get updates. It was launched without a lot of fanfare, but that's something that consistently as councillors, we hear requests to improve the first stop prediction time. So this is a major improvement for customer service and communications. And I'm glad to see free service on New Year's Eve as well. So hopefully we can continue to encourage residents to make a responsible choice in how they're moving around our city on New Year's Eve. So lots going on with OC Transpo, lots to come in the new year. Thank you, merci René, à toi et votre équipe pour tout votre travail. And thank you for the update today. So we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda. Item 4.1, it's titled Response to Council Motion Number 2022-0309. This is a motion approved by Council in December of last year. And part of that motion was that each year we will invite representatives from the unions that work with OC Transpo to make a presentation. So this is a result of that motion. This is a first here for Transit Commission in this meeting. And I'd like to welcome Clint Crabtree, who's here today, along with some of his colleagues. Clint will just make his way up to the front. Good to see you, Clint. Welcome. And Clint has represented ATU, Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 279. And René Amilcar is going to introduce this segment of our meeting. René.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Chair. Bonjour, Clint. OC Transpo has just under 3,000 unionized staff represented by 4 unions. The ETU 279, which represents 72% of the staff, ATU 1760, 13%, QP 5500, 6%, and CIPP 2%. As part of the governance review, as you just said, Council has directed us to provide an opportunity to each of our transit unions once a year to provide a presentation on their members' main issues and concerns. This direction was raised with union leaders at our regular UMCC meetings held early this fall. We then extended a formal invitation to all 4 union presidents in mid-November, inviting them to join us at our meeting today. Staff have also been in touch to support their participation and to connect the unions with the clerk's office. The president of QP 5500 indicated that he would prefer to provide his members' concerns directly to OC Transpo Management and myself. The president of ATU 7060 advised that he would not be attending, but he didn't provide a reason. Staff did follow up with the president of the CIPP, but were not able to connect with him before the meeting, unfortunately. I'm pleased today to have Clint Captree, the president of ATU 279, with us today, whose members represent, as I said, 79% of our unionized employees, including bus and rail operators, mechanics, and other frontline staff. We continue to work closely with our union partners to address concerns and maintain a positive working relationship. We know that open communication is a critical component of creating a better OC Transpo and improving staff morale. Please join me to welcoming Clint Crabtree from ATU 279. Over to you, Clint.
So good morning, members of the Transit Commission. My name is Clint Crabtree. I'm the President Business Agent of ATU Local 279. We represent OC Transpo, Paratranspo, Alstom, and the Royal Canadian Mint. I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak before you today. My members of ATU Local 279 are faced with many challenges today, and the overall morale at OC Transpo is at an all-time low. These frontline operators are faced with a multitude of scheduling issues, train delays, disruptions, and fare evasion. Daily, they are confronted by unhappy passengers due to trip cancellations and late buses. The need for operator barriers became paramount when public dissatisfaction increased, partly due to an unreliable schedule and the public transit system that we have in this city today. Scheduling is and remains the responsibility of the employer, the City of Ottawa. However, my members, these transit operators are public-facing and receive the brunt of the public's dissatisfaction. This negative work environment has a wide impacts to their health and wellness, as well as work-life balance. I have seen a record number of resignations and retirements in the last year, with half of the resignations coming from long service employees. The other half of the resignations are coming from brand new recruits who have completed training successfully, but when faced with the harsh reality and the unrealistic scheduling and the impact to their mental health and home life, they have chosen to leave. We are facing not only a shortage of trained operators, not by a lack of interested applications, but by the inability to provide work-life balance in this job, which used to be a highly desirable career. This all comes at a cost to the taxpayers of the city of Ottawa. Our maintenance members were faced with layoffs of garage attendants back in August of this year, while already being understaffed to perform the work they do each and every day. This work entails maintaining the cleanliness and fueling of the city buses in order to meet the service levels that are required. Our skilled members, such as mechanics and body techs, are doing overtime to make sure buses are maintained and safe for the public and our members on a daily basis. Maintenance work is also being contracted out due to a shortage of skilled trades and undesirable shifts. ATU members are often repairing buses that have been contracted out and not repaired properly by outside vendors. Maintenance schedules, in our members' opinions, have been mismanaged for years, which causes increased maintenance and entire bus fleet in disarray. OC Transpo is having great difficulty recruiting 310Ts right now, which are truck and coach mechanics. The harsh reality here is that we are faced with today is that automotive shops across the city offer weekends off and competitive wages that once upon a time were only achievable by working at OC Transpo. My hope and what we'd like to achieve for the membership is a commitment from senior leadership to better understand the challenges and the impact to wellness and work-life balance that my members are experiencing, and for them to seek improvements in the overall morale. Although there has been constructive dialogue, we have had meetings and established a working group on morale. And AQ 279 understands that improvements don't happen overnight. The time for action is now, and my members require immediate improvements to their workplace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clint. I'll give an opportunity to committee members if they have questions for Mr. Crabtree. Councillor Leeper.
Yeah, Mr. Crabtree, thank you very much. Clearly stated. One item I'd like to hear a bit more about is the mismanagement of maintenance schedules that's resulting in requirement for more maintenance. You feel it's been mismanaged for a long time. Can you get into that in a bit more depth?
I can. So we have another local QP 5500 at OC Transpo that are job planners, supervisors, so on and so forth. So my members, and this is from feedback from my members all the time, is that the planning of the work is not properly done, which we have hoists that are left unfilled. We have mechanics waiting for work orders. We have mechanics waiting for just overall work to do on a daily basis is what I get from, and I get that feedback from my members. So therefore, if the jobs were planned properly and the work was given out, and it was given out directly to the mechanics, body techs, garage tenants, whoever it may be, that work would be done more efficiently, and it's not being done efficiently.
So long stretches during the day when work isn't being done?
Correct. Also, when you send work out to outside vendors, the buses stay at that outside vendor longer than we can turn it back on the road in-house. So we have, I have many examples of vendors having buses on their property for quite a long period of time. I've even visited those properties in the past and monitored those buses being on the property and not moving and not being fixed. Now, these buses, if they were on property and our mechanics, our body techs, the people that we have at OC Transpo, the members of AQ 279, were able to fix those buses properly and get them back on the road, the turnover would be faster, in our opinion, than having it sit on a vendor's property and they take their time getting that bus back on the road.
How long have you seen buses?
We've seen buses for months.
Is it possible that they've got parts or supply chain issues that you would have as well, or?
That could be. I mean, that wasn't looked into, to be honest with you, but we do get the work orders. We know what's being fixed on those buses. We have the opportunity in-house to state within 10 days that we can do the work better, we can fix it. We put a proposal together and we give it to the employer. But having said that, with the amount of work that's needed to be done, the reason is that it's contracted out because they don't feel that we'll be able to do it in-house. And then you see the buses sit on those vendors' properties for a long period of time.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Weekend work. How common is that? I'm sorry, I don't know that condition in the shop.
Well, you have a lot of shifts at OC Transpo that are weekend oriented shifts. And the the desire for people right now, work-life balance, so on and so forth, is that, you know, they want weekends off. I mean, we know that's not attainable all the time because this is a 24-hour operation. And you know what? A lot of buses can be fixed on the weekend because less service is out on the weekend.
Right.
But having said that, we find that people and our members are leaving, or we're not being able to recruit 310T mechanics to come over to OC Transpo now. It's very problematic because they're able to go to those automotive shops around the city, get Monday to Friday, get weekends off, and you know, do work on the side on the weekends if they choose to.
Right.
But at OC Transpo, a lot of the shifts are on the weekends.
Okay.
So that's a problem.
Yeah. I'll let my colleagues ask more questions, but let me sit with that. Thank you.
Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for that presentation. I guess you had mentioned morale issues, and I guess I'm wondering the solutions in your mind to those issues. If there's a top one or two things that we could enact fairly quickly to help with morale, what would you say those would be?
Well, on the transportation side, scheduling has always been an issue. And right now, operators are faced with scheduling that is just not realistic. And when it is unrealistic, obviously the public is the driving force behind transportation. I mean, if we don't have the public, we don't have jobs. So the public is upset and they take it out on the frontline worker, which would be the transit operator. And that's the unfortunate part of this, is that the transit operators don't make the schedules that are put forward, and they're the ones faced with trying to make them work, and they are not working. These buses are late, they're not showing up, and the public, rightfully so, is upset. And we're trying to get ridership back in this city pre-pandemic, and that is our goal. We would like to work with the employer and try to do that. But having said that, we need to improve the existing transit that we have today and make it reliable for the public. And if we did that, that would go a long way into making, namely my members happy and the public happy.
And that comes down to scheduling.
That does come down to scheduling on the transportation side, absolutely. The morale, and then that spreads, that's widespread. I mean, these transit operators deal with the maintenance workers. They tell the maintenance workers about everything that's going on out on the street, out in the bus world, so to speak, as far as transit operators are concerned. And it just brings morale down everywhere. We've had a lot of issues with delays on the train, the train breaking down, maintenance on the train. And then that falls back into the buses. The bus operators are left with picking up overtime, which also, you know, it is voluntary, but they take it and they get burnt out. And we try to tell them, try to relax on the overtime, but there's a shortage of operators. So they're picking up the slack. They picked up the slack throughout the whole pandemic, and they keep doing the jobs that they do, and they do a fantastic job at what they do. It's just the scheduling issues have been have become forefront right now, and that's a big issue, and that's a big cause of the low morale.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Brockington.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Crabtree, for accepting the invite to join us today. I think this is very important, and again, appreciate that you're here. When you talk about scheduling, I think you're referring to more than one thing. One reference you made was the scheduling of actual routes, and in my opinion, how some routes are not realistic to the reality it takes to run a route, which compounds the problem, but also the actual scheduling of your members' shifts, which I think is the chronic issue that you're referring to. How can, like, what specifically has to happen? Because we don't have the intimate knowledge of the scheduling system, but you know how it's impacting your members. What has to happen here?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I think there's a multitude of issues with scheduling that affects them. I mean, it's not only the we had a half-an-hour break implemented recently that was that was federally mandated by the federal government. And that threw a curveball into scheduling, so to speak. And I don't think, listen, they knew about this prior to it coming into effect. They had quite an ample amount of time to prepare for this half-an-hour break coming in. Like, this was 2 years prior to. And I think a lot of work could have been done back then, and it wasn't. Having said that, I mean, Renee wasn't here at the time. We've had good dialogue on the half-an-hour break, and it's going to take time, but there's a lot of things to look at scheduling, and I don't know if it's, you got to break it all the way down and build it back up, but it's, something's got to be done. And I mean, we're willing to sit down and work with the employer. We're always doing that. We go to a scheduling working group every time the new work is implemented and coming out for the operators to book. But to say you got to throw money at it to make it better, that is the truth. There is going to be a cost to improve it and make it better. But I think that cost to improve it, make it better, may attract the ridership that we want on that bus. And we can start getting people to actually pay for the bus instead of having free rides around the city. And it'll go a long way in improving the service that we have.
Excellent, thank you. Can you just expand, the other point you raised was fare evasion. How frequently are you hearing from your members about, heated interactions that they may be engaged with a passenger who's not paying? Operator tries to say, hey, bud, you've got to pay. Ultimately, I know OC Transpo has implemented some procedures where ultimately the operator should not engage too far. But how frequent is this, and what are you hearing from your members?
Fare evasion happens every day, all day, every day. I mean, it's the transit users that are not paying fare know when and where to do it. I mean, we don't have fare inspectors, so to speak. I think we have a group, about 5 or 6 of them, that aren't even really out there doing their job right now. But if you did have fare inspectors out there, I think it would be, obviously out in the public eye, that you may get a ticket or you may get something for fare evasion, may go a long way. I mean, it's happening all the time. And even when we had fare inspectors out there in full force, which we only had a platoon, I think maximum of 10 at one given time, that they knew what time the fare inspectors were off work. They knew at 5 o'clock, Monday to Friday, those fare inspectors are no longer working. They knew fare inspectors weren't out there on the weekend. The public knows this, so they're not paying.
Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Crabtree, for your presentation today. I'll just follow up on my colleagues' questions on fare evasion. So the frustration with the drivers is that they really have no mechanism to enforce payment?
Yeah, I think ultimately OC Transpo has put policies in place that advises the operators not to get into disputes with anybody about fare-related issues. But having said that, there is no mechanism. It's human nature. I mean, you have people coming on the bus and they're not paying. These are operators, but they still are taxpayers of the city as well. And you see people coming on the bus and not paying. It's frustrating to the operator. And some of them do say things. The policy is there not to say anything, not to engage, not to do anything. But they do say things and things happen. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast. I mean, they say things to people when they're not paying the fare. Right or wrong, they do it. And we advise as a union for them not to do it, but it does happen. So there's got to be a mechanism to track. And I've said this years ago, there should be a mechanism on the screen to track fare evasion when someone's not paying. So we know how many people are not paying on the bus on a daily basis. And it becomes part of the operator's job to track fare evasion. I mean, it's a simple button on the MDT screen that you push and you track fare evasion.
Yeah, thank you. I agree that would be useful to have a better understanding of the issue. I know you mentioned that fare inspectors at one point we had maximum of 10. I thought we'd hired some back. I think we're getting an update at the next meeting on fare inspectors, are we? Maybe that's just a question for staff. I know I asked Mr. Scrimger a couple weeks ago if we had an update on the work of the fare inspectors. Do you know if there's an update coming? Is it the next Transit Commission meeting that we'll be having an update?
Chair, the answer is yes. Paul Tributat on my team is in charge of those inspectors, and he will bring an action plan to address those issues that Clint and his members have shared with me a few months ago. Now we are on an action plan to address that.
Okay, thank you, Madame Amakar. And Mr. Crabtree, just on in your presentation, you mentioned fare evasion. I noticed that you didn't mention anything about, or I may have missed it, with respect to, last year we heard a lot about an uptick in violent incidents and this sort of stuff with operators, and it was sort of a cross-Canada phenomena. Do you have, are these still ongoing safety issues for OC Transport drivers? And is there any relation at all to the fare evasion issue, or is it other issues? If you could speak a little bit about that, I'd appreciate it.
No, I think the barriers, the shields and barriers that we have put in place have greatly reduced any. The confrontations are still there. Now it's just verbal harassment. So as far as people being injured on the job and being assaulted physically, that's greatly reduced by the barriers and shields. And that was fantastic to have those implemented. We put a lot of work into that at ATU 279 and through our health and safety committees and the policy health and safety committee to get those implemented back when John Manconi was here and we did a pilot project. So I think they're great. I think they were much needed. But having said that, people are still frustrated with the issues surrounding scheduling, late buses not showing up, so on and so forth. That the harassment's there, and it's more of yelling, screaming, and spitting at operators of their dissatisfaction of the actual schedule.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Just one last question and one point of clarification. You spoke about the fact that you're having a lot of issues with I guess, retention, and the fact that we've lost a lot. There's been a lot of resignations, and I noted, I think you said that a lot of them were long service drivers.
Yep.
You also spoke about the challenges with morale. I know there's been a lot of recruitment of new bus drivers recently. Has that provided any assistance to the issues of morale at all? I would assume, we've got newer people, the more senior people would have more.
No, what we're finding here is that, and what I'm seeing is that I've never seen this before on how many people have been resigning and just retiring in the last year to 2 years. When people come on and when new members are coming on as bus operators, they're staying for a short period of time. I mean, I've never seen so many people come out of training, being recruited, go through training, get their CZ license, and then not stick around for a long period of time. I mean, like I said in my statement that I made today, was this was a very desirable job. People used to want to get on at OC Transpo and do anything they could to try to get on at OC Transpo. It was a great place to work. And just with everything that's going on today, and I don't know if it's with, there's a lot more job opportunities out there, and people are just coming over to OC Transpo and saying, oh, this is not what I expected, and they're leaving, but they're not staying. And so it's kind of hard to say we're behind this amount of bus operators and we don't have as many to put out the service, but you're recruiting them at the same time and they're not staying. So you're not being able to retain people. And just this week, I've had two, I think there were 15 and 17-year members that went on to other positions within the city. We never seen that. So one of them went to Rhodes. He just resigned 2 days ago, a 16-year bus operator. He's had enough. He's fed up. So, and this is from the feedback that I get from my members. This is not, anything other than that. This is feedback that I received from the member that resigned. I mean, the morale there is low. The morale is really bad, and people are just fed up, and they're looking for other ways to make a living, and it's not through OC Transpo anymore.
Okay, thank you for that. And thank you for the clarification. Just one tiny question on clarification. At the beginning, you mentioned who ATU 279 represents. So you represent both paratransport drivers and conventional bus drivers, that's correct?
I do.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for your presentation and answering my questions.
You're welcome.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Crabtree, for coming out today. I was looking at an Ottawa Citizen article from May 2022 when you were saying that that morale was at an all-time low, and it was related to the federally implemented labor code for the 30-minute breaks every 5 hours. You were frustrated then. Has it improved at all? Is there any changes?
Listen, changes are trying to be made. There's no doubt. I mean, we have a working group on morale that we started a couple months ago, and that we are having ongoing meetings. So we're working towards trying to make improvements. Has it improved right now? No. But we are working on trying to make improvements, and the employer, Renee, has committed to me that is a priority, and it's a big priority. But right now, no, morale is very low. The train delay with the diesel train, which is the original O train, has not helped out recently, because now all these diesel rail operators that were being trained to go to the diesel rail, and this is just an example I'm going to give you about how morale is spinning out of control sometimes. So these diesel rail operators are going up to be trained for diesel rail. The diesel rail has now been delayed. These operators did not book bus operator work, which I stated they should be booking bus operator work just in case, but they didn't. Now they're going back to the bus. They're being forced back to the bus to drive the bus when they should have been up and training. And they made all these commitments around their lifestyle. They knew their schedule. Now their schedule has been turned upside down. They're going back to bus. So now they're put as spare operators. So they come into the pool with all the other spare operators, which affects seniority, because they did not book the work in the first place. Now they're being slotted in within their seniority amongst all the other spare operators. And this, I'm trying to speak the operator lingo to you, but this is exactly what's transpiring. So they go back, they work as spare operators, they fit in with their seniority, but now they've circumvented everybody else's seniority because they were not there originally when they booked. They might have booked different work. So it's just, it snowballs all the way down, and then it just makes everybody frustrated. These operators weren't supposed to be there. They weren't supposed to affect my work life. They are now, and these are and it's constant. This is happening all the time because of the disruptions in the rail, the delays in rail, everything that they faced in the last couple of years. I mean, we went through a 2-year period where we thought we were losing 500 to 600 of our members. We didn't end up losing anybody, thank God, and everybody was able to remain employed at OC Transpo. But they went through that. They went through potential layoffs. They went through the implementation of rail, the delays of rail, the rail going down, the maintenance, everything. And now they get hit with a half-an-hour break from the federal government in their bus operator schedule, which has just ruined the whole schedule. Like, I mean, to try to fit a half-an-hour break for buses across the city for everybody that's doing 5 hours of work is a complete mess. So it's a multitude of things that have happened over the last couple of years, and it's just, morale is just, I've just seen it go lower and lower and lower. And right now, I'm saying, it's at an all-time low. We're working on trying to improve it, but it is what it is right now, and it's bad.
I appreciate that. I take it then predictability is a big question. Like if, and this is the nature of just having issues with, line 1, switching over to R1 service, et cetera. That's obviously, it's hard on the riders, it's hard on the drivers. So I appreciate that perspective. In terms of suggestions for recruiting, because obviously they're still recruiting and trying to get more I mean, there's a labor shortage just about everywhere. You have any suggestions?
For recruitment, I don't have any suggestions right now. I mean, I think you got to be honest with these people and tell them what they they need to expect by being recruited to OC Transpo. I remember when I first started OC Transpo, I was told I wasn't going to have a weekend off for 10 years and I wasn't going to do, and you know what? I applied for the job knowing that that was going to be the job. So I think, you know, full honesty needs to be put forward to these individuals that are being recruited and hired, and let them know and set their expectations right away. Because, you know, I don't know what is being said to them when they're going through the training class and when they're being recruited, but we're seeing them drive for a month or two and then resign. So you've wasted all this time and money on training them, which could be, I don't know what the cost of training is today, but I'd say it's got to be over $10,000 per operator for a 6-week cycle, or maybe more. And you're seeing these people leave. That's problematic. I mean, you're not being able to retain a new employee.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for being here, Clint. It's nice to see you again. During the ongoing route review consultations, like you mentioned earlier, that maybe perhaps one of the solutions to the scheduling woes is to break it all down and build it back up again. And at least I sort of see the route review partially achieving that. Management, at least in internal discussions, have stated a willingness and or progress towards improving some of those schedules that are created for operators, like less interlining, ensuring that schedules are created better around the CLC break and perhaps a better recovery time, I hope. How deeply have you been involved in those discussions, and are you seeing any progress with what you're requesting, at least for the future?
No, I mean, they involve us in the discussions. There's no doubt about it. They're transparent that way with us, and I thank them for that. We are involved in the route review. We actually have grievance officers, executive board members going out and doing the route review with the scheduling group, and checking the times on the new runs as well. So you know what? That part is working. We're involved, and they are involving us in it. So that's working.
Okay, that's good to know. So at least looking ahead, there's a glimmer there, right? And it's just a situation right now, and probably for the next few months till after Line 2 launches. And I will say, like in 2014, when I first applied, we were told, oh, you're not going to get a weekend off for 15 years. And I think I was fortunate that I was at the beginning of a blitz that's still happening, if I'm correct, and ended up with a weekend in 2 years. But of course, that's not the expectation. And I think, can we ask questions to staff now or after? Yeah, okay. Is there so rolling off of that into staff questions, I guess. What do we tell our new recruits? Because I remember very well being at the Nepean Sportsplex in 2013 actually, and them telling us all of this stuff, like, oh, you're not going to get a weekend off for 15 years, you're going to be paid 50% during training, and all that stuff that apparently has been surprising some of our more recent recruits.
Chair, we have normally Olivia who's in charge of that. She will come next year, so she will be able to tell you exactly what we say. But I can tell you that we tell them the truth, and we exaggerate just to make sure that they understand. Unfortunately, I think you know that there is a shortage of staff. Those who come, maybe they are not really willing to drive a bus, but they will just try. And when they get the job, unfortunately, they don't stay. And I have statistic as well. I think we have shared those statistics during last TC that with retention, new bus drivers versus former bus drivers. So we can reshare that at the beginning of next year as well.
Okay, thanks very much. I think that information would be handy in guiding whatever you do in the future as well. But no, I'm happy to hear that you've been involved in the discussions for the review, and that it's a glimmer for the future. That was actually my only question for you. Thanks again.
Councillor Brockington, I think you had a additional question?
For staff. Is anyone else for Mr. Crabtree?
Questions for staff is fine. Yep.
Probably for you, but when I was on the library board, one thing that I think they did well is they, through various board meetings, presented a particular piece of operations of how the library does things to better educate trustees. I think in a case of scheduling, my comprehension is fairly low on how OC Transpo factors in all the variables to put a schedule together. And yet it is a chronic issue that has been raised by union presidents in the past. And frankly, could be, if it hasn't already been, a collective bargaining issue. So I'd just like to plant with you, Chair, if maybe in the first half of next year, we could consider a staff presentation at Transit Commission, just going through the process. How do you schedule? What are all the factors at play here? How do you lessen or mitigate the impact on employees? We've heard today that this is impacting not just morale, but their family lives. How do you factor all that in? How do you look long-term to make improvements? Because the same thing isn't viable. So I just want to raise that with you and staff, and maybe at some point next year, we can have a presentation to better understand this whole process.
Thanks, Councillor. It's a good suggestion, and yeah, something we can look at as an update for 2024. Are there any other questions for Mr. Crabtree or any other questions for this item from councillors? Not seeing any hands up. Clint, I want to thank you again for being here and for sharing your perspective. I think it is really valuable for the committee to hear this. And thanks to your executive and your colleagues and your members who are here today. And, you know, pass on our thanks. You are the front line of our transit system. You move our city every single day, early in the morning, late at night, on weekends, on holidays. And it's not always a difficult, it's not always an easy task. It's often a difficult task. And we appreciate what you do to keep our residents safe and comfortable and secure as they move around our city. So thanks for being here, and look forward to welcoming you back in a year's time as well.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
We need to receive this report. So is this report received? Received. Thank you. And we'll move on to item 4.2. I'm going to pass the chair over to Councillor DeRoche for the next segment, and we'll let staff take their positions. Should we take 5 minutes to reset? Good suggestion. Thank you.
Si on peut commencer dans 60 secondes, s'il vous plaît. Donc, je pense qu'on est prêt à commencer. Je vois qu'on a une majorité des membres qui sont présents. Madame Amilcar, bonjour. Monsieur Morgan, bonjour. L'item qu'on va étudier, c'est le 4.2, Stage 2 Light Rail Transit Project. I understand there's a presentation from staff alternative to you, Madame. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. We'll now move to the next presentation on the progress of the O-Train Extension project. Today, we will provide you with information on the status of construction for all 3 O-Train extensions. Over the course of the past few meetings, we have provided you with information on the progress of the O-Train Extension project, as well as plans for launching lines 2 and 4. Today, Michael Morgan, the director of our rail construction program, you know him very well, will provide a construction update on the Stage 2 LRT project. This year, construction on all 3 extensions has been impressive, and we have made significant progress. In the east, track construction is complete, and overhead catenary system installation is on the way and will continue in 2024. Importantly, the connection of the catenary between Stage 1 and Stage 2 was recently completed. This is a key step towards testing of trains in the east. Once installation and electrical testing is completed, residents in the east will see vehicle testing along the new alignment between Blair and Jandak stations. Station construction is taking shape in the west. The cut and cover tunnels continue to progress with excavation complete, roof and wall pours advancing, and backfilling continuing. In the south, testing and commissioning is going well, and finishing works, including regulatory approvals and training, have begun. We look forward to an exciting 2024 with more progress on the east and west extensions, as well as the opening of the south extension. Once complete, the O-Train extensions delivered through Stage 2 will transform our transit system and realize the true potential of the O-Train, connecting residents and communities across the city. Next slide, please. Before I move forward to my colleague, I want to take the opportunity that I'm here today with you, because this is the last time that many of us will gather before the end of 2023. I want to take a moment to say a huge thank you for your support. Your support is so important for me, that drives me, and I want to say kudos, because I think it was a very fruitful year together working, and I'm very excited to come back next year. We have achieved many milestones together, I think, and I'm proud of that. I'm excited about what we will accomplish as we continue to work to improve transit service reliability, we know now, and customer satisfaction for sure. So I hope you will find time to enjoy with your loved one. Et j'ai très hâte de vous rencontrer à nouveau et de continuer notre belle collaboration. Sur ce, je vais passer la parole à Michael qui va vous donner la mise à jour sur le projet de l'étape 2. Merci.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Renee. Glad to be here. We're just having a little glitch here with the translated version, but we can proceed with the version that's on the screen. So I'm just going to provide an update on, go through the 3 segments, start in the east. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see a photo of Montreal Station. So Montreal Station is in a very advanced state. It's according to the contractor, they're at about 80% complete at this location. So they are in there working on elevators. They put in the canopy. They're in good shape at this station. If you go to the next slide, Jeanne d'Arc, this is the most advanced station in the east section. You see that they're doing the rehabilitation of the bridge kind of in the middle there. So kind of reimagining that space for pedestrians and cyclists and others who are coming to the station via bus or other means. At the same time, the station itself is in a very advanced state. It's at actually over 90%. So all of these stations are expected to be completed next year. Next station, Place d'Orleans. So a good shot there. So a few different buildings here, obviously the left-hand structure on Champlain Bridge, the middle structure connecting with the two pedestrian bridges. And then on the far side at the top of the photo, you have the new facility and the reconfiguration of the bus loop in that, excuse me, location. So a lot of work going on here. This location is just over 70% complete. The next station, Convent Glen. So Convent Glen, again, not as much road work on this location anymore, but you see the station is coming along nicely, over 70% complete at this station. So a lot of very good work at the stations. If you go to the last one, Trim Station, just at the end of the road, obviously the very big structure. So this is where the Fairgate entrance is going to be kind of in the foreground, pedestrian bridge to get to the train system in the middle of the highway. So very good progress. No issues to report on the stations at all. Just on the next slide, we talk a little bit about the mobility impacts in the east. So there's still a lot of road work to be done in the east. And part of the project scope is to actually repave the entire 174 from essentially all the way to Trim. And so, part of that is restoring the shoulder. Right now, there's essentially no safe shoulder on the highway. So that's why there's a speed reduction. Repave the entire highway, restore the shoulder. So still lots of activities, still lots of traffic impacts in the east going forward. Next slide, we'll just talk a little bit about the milestones that have been achieved. So Troy's mentioned it, Renee's mentioned it now, but connecting the catenary between Blair to the east section is that physical interface is a big milestone. Did take us a couple of weekends to do that. But what that unlocks is now the next step is for us to finish the configuration of that catenary system essentially between Blair and Jeanne d'Arc, power up the traction power substation that's in the Montreal Road interleaf, Clover interleaf, and then we can put power in the overhead catenary. Once we have power in the overhead catenary, we can start to bring trains through there. And so right now, tentatively end of January to bring the first test train through there. But by the end of next year, we'll have trains going all the way through to Trim. Go to the next slide, just talk about the upcoming activity. So continue to work on all the stations. We need to get occupancy next year, get all the elevators approved next year. And then we're going to start and nearly complete train testing, but not quite in the year. We will start operator training on the east late next year. Go to the next slide, just in terms of the project update. So as part of putting up the catenary systems and verifying things, we did run into a challenge with the poles. And so we have lost a little bit of time. So we've lost about 60 days. And so we're roughly 115 days behind the original planned schedule. But for being 4 years into a project, that's not the end of the world. So still looking at that spring time frame for trial running and then opening. So that's the update on the east. We'll go to the west now. So I'll just walk you through each of the stations very quickly. So on the next one, Kitchissippi Station. So obviously this one's pretty tight into the community. Earlier in the year, we had a lot of time rock excavating. Excuse me. That's all done now. And so now we're on to building the station up. You can start to see the form and shape of the structure coming out of the ground. Obviously, the temporary Roosevelt Bridge in the distance will come out once we put the train into service. The next one, Sherburne Station. Again, so this is in the actual cut area. So a lot of structures here. We need to get elevators. There's kind of an intermediate platform. So you don't really get a sense of the station now, but there is a lot of activity at that location. The next one, New Orchard. Again, so here you see the bottom of the screen where the tunnel kind of separates and widens to make space for the platforms. Then there'll be a bit of a center platform and you can drop down with the tunnels there. So that'll be an open air station. The platform area is under the open air section at the bottom of the page. in terms of the next slide, the cut and cover progress. So this, as was described earlier, the excavation for the cut and cover is now complete, which is very exciting. The invert, or I'll call it the floor of the tunnel, is 98% complete across the entire alignment. The walls are roughly 90% complete and the roof is roughly 84% complete. So we are expecting to actually finish the tunnel end to end, this 2.5 kilometer tunnel, roughly in March, April, May timeframe. Once that is done, then we're going to start installing the rail. The base plinths for the rail connections between Tunney's pasture to this location are already underway. We'll have to continue that once the tunnel's fully covered. And next year is going to be about building rail in the system. So, a big milestone on the project. It's like we're turning over the system, going from heavy civil works to rail infrastructure and catenary works. You go to the next slide, just show you a bit of a picture. So as we finish the tunnel and we cover it up, it kind of disappears, So 2 years ago, I showed up and I would brag about big holes in the ground, and now I'm showing up and bragging about the hole being gone and it being covered in. And so the tunnel is effectively being buried now. They're backfilling it now, which is good. All of the work and the rail work in this residential area will essentially go underground, save and except for the station. So a good progress there. And then just the last shot, one more shot of cut and cover. This is kind of the far end of the line. This is where there's roughly just over between 200 and 250 meters of tunnel left to be built. Go to the next station, Lincoln Field. So very advanced. So there used to be on the kind of the lower end of the photo, there used to be a very large rock stockpile at that location, which has essentially been removed now. On this photo, what you see on the left-hand side is in the middle, there's the bus operator building. That's where the future bus loop is going to be, the train station in the middle. And then the right-hand side, this is all the existing transway station, which will be torn down, and that will be kind of landscaped and given back to the NCC for their use. So a lot of activity in this area. Unfortunately, we can't actually open up the new bus loop until the train is in service because of the space constraints required for the number of buses working through this location. If you go to the next one, Iris Station, very good progress here. Again, this one is kind of tucked in between the Pinecrest Creek, which we realigned, a series of utilities, and obviously Iris Road in the middle of the page there. The next shot, if you go down, you'll see a little bit kind of from ground level, Iris Station again, kind of coming together very nicely. Very good progress there. You see the row of concrete kind of blocks in the middle. That's going to hold the inter-track barrier. But you see they're essentially wanting to come through here with track in 2024. Go to Queensview Station, which is on the next one. So a lot of really great progress here. Obviously getting that pedestrian bridge in earlier this year was good. And then on the left-hand side, you see where the elevator bank will go in for people to access. There has been provisions made to the structure on the left-hand side of that photo to allow a future, if a developer came along and wanted to add a pedestrian bridge to that location, they could do that in the future. So the structure on the left has been set up to accommodate that. And then Queensview on the right, obviously, you see the station there, the roof. We're into elevators, we're into finishing this station now. The next one, talk a little bit about Pinecrest. So you see in the distance, you see Pinecrest Station. So very good progress there. That was kind of tucked away a little bit, not as obvious depending on the direction you're going on the highway. Upper right is where the future bus loop will be. That's where if you're coming to this station, you're coming to the LRT in this neighborhood, this is where you will pick up, and the majority of the buses will come to this location as opposed to Queensview. You see the permanent on-ramp that's in place, and then you see just tucked away out of the picture is the temporary bus ramp, off-ramp. We are still planning on opening an off-ramp to general traffic this year. The weather, it's goodness gracious, like the weather on Friday, the weather on Monday is like just the gods of smile on us, and so that's helping us quite a bit. If it was snowing and hailing, we'd be in trouble, but so far the weather's holding. We should be able to open that this year. We will have to close it temporarily over weekends next year to add the second lane. It's meant to be 2 lanes, 2 westbound off-ramp lanes. So we'll have to come back and do that, but this year is looking good. Bayshore Station, the next slide. Yeah, okay. Pinecrest Station, looking back, we talked about Pinecrest, you can go to the next one. Bayshore Station. So a lot of work at this location to build an additional emergency egress path. And so that's basically an underground tunnel that's going to go under the tracks to allow you to evacuate in the event of a fire. And so a lot of work there. Once that underground tunnel is built, then we'll be able to come through this area with the tracks. And if you go to the next slide, you start to see the tracks coming through. Obviously, Moody LMSF, the tracks are there. This is back through Moody Station. Moody Station road alignment's done. Station's very advanced. Quite a bit of progress has been made at this location. So when you go to the next slide, just show you kind of a shot of the maintenance facility. So the tracks are in at the maintenance facility. What's going to happen next year is once they finish the catenary installation on the east, that crew will move to the LMSF and they'll start putting up poles and catenary systems in the maintenance facility at Corkstown. The plan right now is for us to truck a vehicle over to this location kind of middle of next summer to be able to start early testing at this location using a test vehicle. In terms of just some of the milestones, obviously rail installation at the LMSF, the Queensview Ped Bridge, a new Woodruff pedestrian bridge, and then completion of the excavation. So that's obviously very good news for the residents in that area. If you go to the next slide, just looking ahead to next year, it's really about rail installation. You know, it's a big turning point in the project that we've gone from heavy civil construction to rail infrastructure construction. So that should be very good news for everyone. The other thing that's not on this page, but kind of which is happening in the background, is the handover of the stage 2 vehicles. So the additional Alstom Citadis vehicles, which are being delivered. So we have 13 that are in rotation right now as part of the fleet. There are another 5 that are close, 4 in final inspection, and a 5th vehicle that's actually doing its burn-in hours. And so we're getting pretty close to having an additional 18, which should more than cover us for the number of vehicles required for the East service. And so no concerns there in terms of timing of those vehicles. If you go to the next slide, just talk about the traffic impact. So this is pretty much business as usual. Obviously, that one off-ramp at Pinecrest is there's a lot of attention on that. But the other areas, we're going to just continue to open and close roads and open and close lanes as required to keep the progress going. The same thing on the next slide, a few different areas. The other big change that comes with the project is the realignment of the SGM Parkway. And so now that we have the tunnel built, the parkway is actually going to be moved further away from the river over top of part of the tunnel. So that'll be a big change, and there'll be some big road impacts coming next year for that work. If you go to the next slide, just the schedule. So the schedule is the same. This hasn't changed at all, still kind of targeting start of November for handover, and we would do trial running, and then we'd make a decision about when to open the system for service. So that's the Confederation line, east and west extensions. I'll go to the O-Train South. So we'll talk quite a bit about the stations here, and just to tell you about the progress, la construction des 13 stations de la ligne Trillium Line progresse et les mises en service sont en cours. Les permis d'occupation pour les stations avancent et on espère avoir les approbations à la fin de janvier de l'année prochaine. Alors, ça avance, on continue avec toutes les approbations qui viennent de la ville, qui viennent de Transport Canada, mais il n'y a pas de problème. Aujourd'hui, il n'y a pas de problème, mais on regarde, c'est quelque chose qu'on suit chaque jour. In terms of Bayview Station, I think this is at one point in one of my updates, I talked about deferring some works, and this Bayview pedestrian bridge was one of the works that we were going to defer. We essentially gave the contractor the opportunity to complete this after the fact. They've actually progressed very well, and so this is unlikely to become deferred works. So the deferred works then becomes much simpler. It becomes landscaping, some extents of the park and ride, but as you'll see, even the park and rides, they've made very good progress on over the last few months. You go to Corso Italia Station is the next one. So you see the left-hand side, reinstated the pathway, far left-hand side, OCH is starting their development. On the right-hand side, you see a bit of a snow-covered pathway. That's just an emergency egress pathway. That's not actually a pathway for regular use. It doesn't lead anywhere except to the street. The station's in very good shape. We're pretty happy with the look and feel. Public art is installed. We're getting ready to go here. Next one, Dow's Lake Station. So again, this one, we had a bit of a delay because of the Hydro Ottawa strike, but I think they're on track to recover that such that it's finished at the same time as the other stations. So very good shape here. And obviously just kind of the other side of the road there. They're continuing to work on the Ottawa Hospital project, and there may be some impacts next year, and just in terms of when they need to start doing work over the guideway. So something to watch and keep an eye on. Carlton Station is on the next slide. So very, good progress here. They're really onto the landscaping at this point. They do need to reinstate the public art that was at that location. So, and then obviously there's the underground walkway that's currently on detour around the landscaping activity. So very good shape onto the kind of the finishing touches. We go to the next one. Just to show you the Rita River Bridge, you see the approach pathways in this photo have been paved. The handrails there's actually some retaining walls there that you can see kind of on either side. The handrails on the retaining walls have been installed just recently, but we're now waiting for the handrails on the bridge itself. And then at that point, once the handrails are in, you wouldn't really need the lighting to open it because it connects to a pathway that's not lit. But theoretically, you could open it once you have the handrails in place. So close, but not quite there yet. You go to the next slide, Mooney's Bay. So Mooney's Bay, again, this is a simpler station, but it's been in very good shape for a while now. So nothing really to report here. Walkley Station a little bit further down. A good shape. The station structure itself is in very good shape. There's been quite a bit of work and twos and fro's a little bit on that pathway. I know that there's been inquiries about that, but that's largely behind us now. Some finishing works here. This one's very close to getting occupancy. And so as we get one station with occupancy, they'll all kind of tick over and we'll be able to certify the entire system. Greenboro Station next. There hasn't been a ton of work here, but because it's largely been finished for a while now. If you go to South Keys on the next photo, South Keys is again one of the stations that was affected by the Hydro Ottawa strike, but it's now looking good and caught up. There is still quite a bit of landscaping work being done on the side facing the parkway. So more work to be done there. Need to get the fare gates installed, need to get the elevators commissioned at this location. Go to Leitrim Station. So this hasn't changed too much since our last photos. If you go to the next photo, give you a bit of a kind of panned out view of the park and ride. So you see the loop area for the buses is done. What they're doing now is kind of incrementally filling in the sidewalk spaces. And then on the bottom kind of left, you see this is where the actual parking spots are going to be in the future. And so arriving by the bus, you'll get dropped off. You won't have to go through any gates. You'll go directly into the station. If you arrive by car, you'll kind of go up the middle of the page. You'll have to go through a set of fare gates to get into the station. So very much implementing the fare paid zone concept at this location. They are working every day on this location, and so they're making good progress. If you go to the next one, Bowesville, relatively in the same configuration. You see they're kind of incrementally working through the sidewalk pieces. You go to I don't know if there's a zoomed out version or not at Bowesville, but there's not. Yeah, so Bowesville, the same condition, working on the park and ride's in decent shape. Just kind of out of the image, there's quite a bit of paving area that's been completed. Then you go to Limebank Station next. You see again the bus loops being finished up. The station's in good shape. The adjacent, a lot of questions about Main Road, and so that does look like it's going to be done well ahead of time. So no concerns there. We don't have an exact date on the timing for the signalization of that intersection, but obviously that would be, so we would likely just bag those signals and not use it until we're ready to open up this area to the public and to traffic. And then the next slide just on Uplands. Again, I think the last few slides showed a fair amount of construction activity, but we're at a pretty good point now where it's just down to the finishing touches with landscaping, both on the foreground of this photo, but also the Ernston, the conference center side of the page. And then the last slide, Airport Station, very good progress there. Nothing to really report. It's been in an advanced state for a number of months now. Just in terms of mobility impacts, so the MUPs, again, the twos and fro's with the closing that were required. On Club, we have been able to give back the lanes. And now that we've done that, we can start to work with our partners in infrastructure services to schedule the repaving of that road, because I know there's been lots of questions about the condition of that road. If you go to the next one, these are those last few intersections down kind of at the southern end. We do need to activate the traffic lights at Bowesville and Earl Armstrong. We do need to activate and then that's probably the more urgent one. The less urgent ones are the signalization to get into the bus loop and then the signalization to get in for regular car traffic at Main Road. So I don't have a date for you, unfortunately, on the signalization of that street, but the realignment's done. It's just kind of waiting for next steps on signalization. And then if you go to the next slide, just to talk about the project schedule generally. So, we are getting to a point where it's, getting around the corner on some of the station occupancy, which is kind of a big milestone to be able to get the public into those stations. So that's very good. Over the coming 6 weeks, we hope to get occupancy at a number of locations. The next step is really the train testing. We have been doing a fair amount of train testing in the evening, getting between 5 and 6 hours of trains out on the network running around. The next focus is really to increase the number of trained operators such that we can go, instead of going 5 and 6 hours, we can start going up to 12, all the way up to 18, 20 hours a day of running. And that will allow us to really understand the reliability of the system, reliability of the maintenance practices, reliability of the system generally. So we need to get to that point, and that will start in the new year. We have our first cohort of operators nearly trained, and the second one is starting imminently. There's a total of right now 4 cohorts that are required. So those cohorts 3 and 4 will kind of start in the new year shortly after we get back from the break. So lots of good progress. I not able to kind of predict where we're going to end up in terms of the schedule, but we are kind of moving forward on all fronts. So the next slide, just kind of a summary of the risks and activities. This is just kind of the general slide that we've been tracking for several commission or meetings now. The first one, obviously, is still trying to avoid any safety incident during service, still kind of keeping that front of mind because that will blow out the schedule. Station occupancy approvals, we talked about a little bit. Park and Ride has made very good progress over the last few months. The third is the train testing and commissioning. They're very close to being finished. We still need to run more hours on it to kind of work out bugs and find issues and surface problems that we can then correct before going to service. But otherwise, we're in good shape. And then I would say the only other one I would comment on this list is the rail regulatory approvals, which seem to be in hand. I haven't, no hiccups there, no concerns. Transport Canada has been a good partner on the file, been helping us out and being responsive. And so we think we're very, very close to that. Ultimately, we need that just before we open to the public in the form of a railway operating certificate. So we expect to receive that per the schedule and per our needs. So no issues, no concerns there with Transport Canada. And then again, just a reminder how to stay connected to us. Different ways. Obviously, the new website went up is very interesting. We are trying to post blog updates and provide interesting articles for you to share as needed. And then, so that's the end of the presentation, but we do have a short video just to kind of give you a before and after look at some of the locations. So let Clarks put up the video now.
Okay, merci. I was waiting for Boseville and Line Bank Station there. I'm not sure we saw there at the end there, but thank you for that. Merci pour votre présentation. On va passer maintenant aux questions. On commence avec conseiller Brockington.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to staff for this latest update. It's great to see the progress, all three lines or all three directions. The opening date for the south end line looks like it's changed again. At our last meeting, we were looking at April of 2024, and now on your chart, it looks like it could be June of 2024. Can staff just comment on what we're targeting for the opening date, please?
Chair, thank you for the question. In the last meeting, I said spring, and I had a specific question to guess, I guess April, but we're still in spring.
Okay, I want to wrap my head around the level of accountability that we have with our contractors and whether the opening date is at their discretion or whether we have the ability to say, you know what, we need to set some strict deadlines here. We need to be aiming towards a date, May 1st, or whatever date you want to pick today, and not see that when we come back in the new year, it's now September, or there are other delays for whatever reason, and it's now late 2024. How much influence do we have sitting with our partners to get a date established so we don't keep seeing these dates postponed further and further?
Thank you, Chair. We have weekly meetings, and this is on top of all other meetings that we can have. And since 2 weeks ago, we have started to have Jan Becker with us, is in charge of the T-Next project, is sitting with us to make sure that we have the same understanding. So we don't say a date and he will have another date in his head. I can tell you that we're working very, very well collaboratively. However, this is normal to have those kind of issues, and I prefer to have them during this period of time. When time comes to guess for date, for sure it's always, is everything okay? And Clint Crabtree was here earlier and shared that we had bus drivers ready to go as operators, and we had to bring them back. So we wanted to make sure that we were ready to work with T-Next, but however, because of many reasons, we couldn't. So that's why we brought those people back to the bus side. But this is the collaboration we have together. We trust each other, but sometimes that can happen. And I can tell you the focus for T-Next and for my group is definitely we want to open this line as soon as possible, but we will do it only when we will make sure that it's safe to do so, and it's safe and reliable as well. This is, I think, the takeover today. Safe and reliable.
Excellent, thank you. No disagreement there. I guess what I've said in the past is if we know what tasks remain, and if we know how long each task takes, you can accurately pinpoint when you're going to be done and ready. And so it's I guess frustrating, not just for all of us, but the public who are looking forward to seeing the south end opened. You've mentioned trains are running at night. I see them myself basically every time I'm out. We're running them, as you said, 5 to 6 hours a day. What are we experiencing with our testing? Are there any issues? Anything of concern that you need to raise with us? How is testing going?
So I think testing is going as expected. We know that, for example, there's 4 switch heaters at Line Bank that don't have the gas lines connected yet. And so as you would expect, as we hit some winter weather, we started to see some switch issues. But as more and more of those switch heaters come online and are finished, we'll be in a better spot there. In mid-November, we did do a first test with 9 trains in service, and that surfaced some software challenges that needed to be adjusted. And we expect that the more we run, the more we will surface small issues, and ideally they just kind of get resolved quickly, and none of them are kind of showstoppers, but we have been seeing some things. The more we do testing, the more we surface some issues. Both on the infrastructure side as well as on the vehicle side. On the vehicle side, some of it's like just shakedown issues, the door, we've had the trains for 2 years. We haven't been using the doors a lot. So now kind of putting them into service, saying, okay, now when you're running the trains, we want you to open and close the doors at every stop, just as a means to really say, okay, we need to exercise this as much as possible. So we're absolutely seeing issues and we're correcting them. Nothing so far we've seen that said, oh, this is a problem, we need to pause. That's going to take us 3 months to resolve. To date, it's all been small stuff that can get resolved quickly.
That's great to hear. Thank you. You mentioned the Walkley MUP that connects Walkley with the RioCan property on the east. Is the LRT team's responsibilities with the MUP now complete before they take over? I met with RioCan this week. We were talking about their work on the MUP, but is the MUP that the LRT team is supposed to build landscape, is that done?
Nearly. Mr. Chair, the landscaping is not complete. You see some of the spots have the first layer of topsoil, but none of the bushes or the shrubs or that type of thing have been put in place yet.
Okay, fair enough. Chair, I'll just add, and again, it's quite a ways away and we know that timelines change, but I was just noting that the West End opening date is tentatively scheduled for late 2026. The good thing about that date is that's also the tentative timelines of opening the new Atasoke Library, which the West End of the LRT will serve as well. And if both timelines stick to our current schedule, it would be a fantastic quarter for this city to see our new library with Archives Canada and the LRT open. So I just wanted to raise that today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mike, for a presentation as always. First of all, I just want to let you know that I want to say thank you to the staff of the Stage 2 who are always helpful. As you know, the west side, Bay Ward is heavily impacted by the construction with detours, etc. And the Stage 2 team have been incredibly helpful working through all the issues that happen almost daily. So I just want to say thanks for that. In terms of pathways, and this is across the whole system, can we be sure of winter maintenance? It strikes me that if we don't have all year round access to the stations, really good access, we may have wasted our time building a system if we don't have it so that it's as easy to get to as possible. So I just want to know, it may not be you directly who's working on it, but is that being looked at thoroughly?
Mr. Chair, there is a working group that's looking at all the new pathways and all the new connections to the stations. Obviously, there's kind of a interplay between Public Works, Transit, NCC. So there's a lot of owners as well. And so there's even a split between Transit, what Transit Service is doing with our staff versus what RTG will do with their staff. And so there is a working group looking at mapping out all the connections and all the accountabilities, responsibilities. I know that that goes so far, and at some point there will be need to be a discussion if there's kind of further links or longer distance links that need to be maintained. But certainly with anything within the catchment, we're trying to make sure it's done properly.
That would be great. How can we be updated on that? Because that is crucial to communicate to the community how things are moving along. I get it. It's really complicated. We're very unique in terms of the NCC and then other departments being involved and the fact that, the Stage 2 is being built by a third party and working it all together. So how can we get updates?
Mr. Chair, I can do a check-in with that working group and assess how far they are along in terms of assigning the accountabilities and then report back on where they are, as well as the status of which pathways are kind of fully known and accounted for and which ones are maybe still nobody's taken ownership or responsibility for them.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. One of the questions I get all the time, and you'll know this one, the pedestrian bridge at Queensview. It's just there and it's just delighting people. It's connectivity. And due to the fact that the station's not going to open till the the end of 2026, is it possible that people can use it before then?
Mr. Chair, that station is connected to, or sorry, the pedestrian bridge is connected to the station, has a series of elevators, is probably at least a year and a half away from being finished to the point where it could be usable. And then at that point, we would need to reassess from an occupancy perspective, from an ownership, from a maintenance perspective, who would be taking that over. Currently, Rideau Transit Group has responsibility for the maintenance of that facility, but they would not be taking that on until the system goes live. And so that would be something that once the station is further advanced, we could assess to see if there's an opportunity for an early opening of that structure.
I really appreciate, thank you. Is it possible to have a public presentation, particularly for the West End, but for the overall system? I know that there's a real appetite just because, I mean, they don't get these presentations that we do. We share the slides, et cetera, but give them a chance to ask questions, perhaps in the spring.
Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay, that'd be great. Well, thank you as always.
Thank you, Councillor Liebert.
Thanks, Chair. We haven't seen the Alstom report, and I'm contemplating kind of the legal steps that councillors could use to challenge the refusal by RTG to provide that to us. But we do know enough about it to know that there are some mitigations for stage one that have been suggested that I'm wondering if they are being thought of for stage two. So the ones I'm particularly interested in are the guardrail extensions, as well as the retaining walls for ballast. Is stage two designed in such a way to ensure that those would be built to the satisfaction of what Alstom is looking for in stage one? And I hope the question's reasonably clear. I'm sorry if I.
So I guess you asked a very precise point about one thing, about the extending the restraining rail through the curves and beyond the curves to ensure that there's stability in the actual stresses of the rail. So there's really one critical location on the Confed line, which is at Blair, and we have made that change.
Okay.
There are other secondary changes like putting top of rail lubricators. Currently, we've provisioned for a series of gauge face lubricators, but those can be swapped out with top of rail lubricators fairly simply. It's just a swap of technology. So,
and I'm sorry, how have they currently been configured?
So currently, we're just in the phase of building the infrastructure. So ensuring there's conduits, ensuring there's power, and ensuring there's communications to the location where the unit would be installed. Okay. And so I suspect that the gauge face lubricators are on order. But
and I'm sorry, I just missed that word again. The
gauge face lubricators. So you can you can put top of rail lubrication, or you can put lubrication on the face of the rail.
Okay.
Right now, we've planned for face of the rail, but you could swap that out with a unit that is top of the rail, which would align with what they're doing on stage one.
Okay. Thank
so
you.
Richard and I are in very close contact on any technical changes that arise to make sure that we've accounted for those and are including those in our work.
And then the other one, I think stage two, or at least in the West End, is physically more constrained by retaining walls along more of its route, but the retention of ballast between retaining walls is something that I think Alstom has recommended be done near some of those Herdman and Tremblay area. Have any changes been implemented for stage two such that there are more retaining walls to ensure ballast is being better retained than it is in stage one?
Mr. Chair, I'll have to take that specific question away. I don't know the answer to that offhand, but I would just say that just to give you some comfort, we have engaged RTG and RTM Alstom through a contract to provide, they provided oversight and input into the project specifications. They have boots on the ground now providing oversight of what we're building. So they've reviewed the designs. They have people on the field reviewing what we're building. that's part of the process to ensure that when we're ready to hand it over to them, they've been involved the entire way along and they can readily accept the infrastructure. But the specific point about the ballast at certain constrained locations, I'll check into that.
Yeah, we don't have an idea yet as to whether or not RTG is accepting the Alstom recommendation. We have not seen the Alstom recommendation in any depth with respect to retaining the ballast in order to prevent the track from moving. So I am curious to know whether that is something that will be implemented in stage 2 without necessarily having seen RTG's response to that Alstom recommendation. That's it. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Councillor Leeper asked the first part of my question. And I want to continue on that by asking, are we using ballast in the cut and cover tunnel? Actually, I would say everything west of Kitchissippi is cut and cover until Lincoln Fields, right? More or less. Are we using ballast in that section, or are we kind of getting tracks in the concrete there?
Mr. Chair, that's a long answer, but leaving Tunney's, you start with the plinth track, and then you go one half of the track is plinth, one half is ballast. And then when you get to the tunnel, it's all plinth all the way through essentially to Lincoln Fields. And then you're switching back to ballast, then you're switching back to plinth, then you're switching back to ballast.
Okay, thank you. Because I'm picturing the track, and I think there are only thankfully much fewer sharp curves in the western, actually in all the extensions. So that's kind of what I'm picturing. I think the sharpest one's kind of where curves to go down at Lincoln Fields, but it's fine, whatever. I can find that out myself. Because this was brought up at this could definitely be an email, but because this was brought up publicly by the president of 279, with the possible with the handover date that's sort of up in the air with stage 2, is that when it comes to the way that operators are booked and operator work is set up there? When I remember when we were leading up to stage 1 LRT, we booked 2 sets of work, right? We booked a set of work if the transit was still open, and a set if line 1 were to open. Is that something that you have considered, or is there a reason why you're pushing those operators into the spare board instead?
Chair, it's not an easy answer because we want to have our people on time, and we know that we're supposed to launch the service this year. Unfortunately, the service is delayed. So when we ask a bus driver to book and maybe will leave the job, that brings a lot of issues on the service. And we talked a lot about the reliability of the service. This is something when an operator book for a job and is not available for the job, that brings a complexity. So we are trying to deal with that. However, I have weekly meetings with the union, and we work very well together to try to mitigate. So sometimes I have to decide, should I deliver the service or work on the morale? And sometimes it's hard. I'm trying to have the ball. It's not normally possible, unfortunately. Maybe Troy is supposed to rajouter des choses, but it's not an easy one.
Yes, one of the issues that the unions raised with regards to morale is the fact that in order to sustain service and deal with some of the challenges we're dealing with on the bus side, we knew that there was going to be delays. We didn't need all those operators in training, so we brought them back to bus. In an ideal world, the training would have continued, and then we would have been launching the train. So that did create some challenges and some frustration for some of those individual members. And we tried to work with those, unique circumstances that people had with regards to plans they may have had in terms of, vacations or daycare arrangements, those types of things. So, that's been one of the main issues that we've heard recently is that change in which we brought them into training and said, you know what, it's too early, put you back to bus. That was a source of some frustration for some people, but it was the right thing to do for the service for our customers as well as for other bus operators who are receiving that frustration, of cancellations. Moving forward, when we get into, getting closer to launch, we are looking at all those options with regards to, the bookings and how we coordinate that. There's requirements, that the constructors have to give us, notification 6 months in advance so that we can do that planning, scheduling cycle, but recognizing still within that 6 months, there could be some shifts. So I think we've got that covered. We're looking at those options. It's not ideal to have 2 bookings and have, operators sort of guessing where they're going to be, but it's the right thing to do in certain circumstances. But as I said, the big frustration that we heard from our staff was that shift that we made from rail to bus, or back from rail to bus. And it was the right thing to do for the service.
No, I understand it is a dynamic situation, and I mean, ultimately, it really is pretty short term, right? In the grand scheme of things, it is short term. So hopefully shorter than like way past spring 2024. But I'll keep my fingers crossed for that. Thank you very much for this update. It's very heartening to see all this good progress on the three extensions. Obviously, I care most about South and West. But I think Tim has a question about the diesel tug. Thank you.
Maybe Councillor Tierney. Can't hear you, Councillor Tierney. Start over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Lowe. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about the tug today. It's here. I'm happy. Love it. I do share a lot of the similar concerns as Councillor Leeper about the Alstom report, but I'll save that for a rainy day. What I was looking in the East End, can you confirm, Michael, again, what the timelines are? Because there seems to be a lot more slippage than I thought on the timeline. We want a safe, secure system, so don't get me wrong. And the East End's progressing very well. When would the testing, when are we going to see them running up and down the tracks? Because I know they got the catenary systems in, they're firing everything up, looking good. When are we going to see the testing of the trains? And when will paid service be in place?
Mr. Chair, the testing currently is planned for the end of January, February. That's a little bit dependent on the weather and things coming together, but that's the current plan to see first thing next year at around that timeline. And then by the end of the year across the entire line, there has been some slippage. The current estimate for completion is March 21, 2025.
Oh, that's a lot more slippage. Is it not? Like, I'm just trying. I thought it was going to be fair service in 2024. Was it not originally?
Mr. Chair, I think the plan was always to have the system finished in 2024 with handover in kind of early 2025. We have lost 60 days in the latest schedule update, so handover is being pushed to March 21.
Okay, fair enough. And the other thing, I just discovered, we've had a lot of lane closures and things happening in the East End, which has been a bit of a challenge. We've all toughed through it. Our 4 East End councillors working together. We realize it. But last night I noticed the 174 went down to 1 lane last night on each side after 10:30. I think we really have to make sure we have the messaging out there because I got quite a few complaints about that. But that's something I can take offline with you later on, and we can discuss as collectively as a group in the East End. But I want to thank you for the presentation. I think it's good. We're keeping people up to date, and that's what they really want to know. So that's all I have today, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Any other questions from committee members? If not, I'll go to some questions. Thank you very much again for the presentation, and specifically some of the road work that's being undertaken at Earl Armstrong and Bowesville. I'll just to relay to you the importance of having that energized, and I know you're working on that, and I appreciate you raising that today because it is very new for that part of the community, and I think there's some confusion with the way it's come into play because it is a dramatic change for the traffic patterns there. So appreciate that. There's been questions on sort of the winter maintenance and the pathways and the MUP. And I certainly support that that we're going to look at how we can sort of maximize the access. In my mind, though, some of the things like the snowshoeing or the skiing, to me, we have time to look into that. And I guess I want to hear from staff and specifically Mr. Morgan that you are focusing right now on the planned work that we have been planning so that we can complete this project. And some of the other secondary concerns that are being raised that are unplanned, that we're going to address them, but you're going to focus on the planned work so that we can complete this system, which we're all impatient with progress, of course, but we want it done safely and come out of the gate in a reliable way. So your focus, your time is on the planned work, I hope.
Mr. Chair, absolutely. There are some secondary activities like landscaping and some very long multi pathways in different areas, but I think we've always asked our contractors to prioritize on opening the system and given them latitude to defer works that don't affect the safety, that don't affect the reliability of the system. Our priority is to open on the Trillium Line, for example, our priority is to open it. We know that we will be deferring some, like the multi-use pathway. There's a gravel dust, stone dust pathway that likely will get deferred, but that's in the name of opening the entire line. So absolutely, the focus is on opening the line, and some of the secondary activities, we absolutely provide attention to them, and we don't just dismiss them. We work on them, but in terms of our priorities with the contractor, it's opening the system.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that assurance. And I think when we get updates, as we do today in a transparent fashion that we've been bringing over the months, there's this tendency to sort of go back in time to the pre-commission of inquiry where we would say, come up with a firm date, whip the contractor, make this happen. And I think we have to pause and again reflect on the commission of inquiry, that we are walking the talk with the recommendations that came out of that we are going to be transparent in terms of showing progress and where we're seeing challenges, and working collaboratively with the contractor, holding him to account, as Councillor Brockington said, and expressing to them the urgency and the priority of this project for the City of Ottawa, but that you're doing this in a collaborative way and in a way that, again, will not create a bigger problems as we saw with stage one. Okay. Can you comment on that?
It's exactly that, the chair. Yep. Okay.
And I've done this several times as well at committees. Speak to the testing. I mean, that is a big milestone that it's more than just finishing tasks and completing work. There's going to be a lot of focus and a lot of expectations going into the testing. Not only will we be transparent, but that will we accept the system only when it is operating. And if there are problems, that could have an impact on the timelines. But again, you're giving us your best timelines, but can you just speak to the importance of the testing, and that part of the challenge of coming up with this date is we need to have confidence that the system will be ready and the testing will be thorough and transparent. So can you just speak to that? Because that's what I tell the public, certainly in my community, that we're doing our best to come up with timelines, but the testing is critical and could have an impact on it. And I think people expect us to put a lot of emphasis on the testing, if you could speak to that.
Merci, Chair. Je vais demander à Michael de compléter s'il faut. Effectivement, la phase de test est cruciale parce que c'est là qu'on va déterminer si on a un go ou un no-go. Mais je veux vous assurer aussi que présentement, ce qu'on fait, c'est aussi un test, dans le sens que pour qu'on puisse former nos opérateurs, on doit avoir toutes les conditions gagnantes. Autrement, on ne les crédite pas des heures de formation. Donc ça veut dire que quand on a des problèmes de switch, par exemple, ou ce que TINEX doit venir faire des réparations, nos chauffeurs sont mis en attente et ces heures-là ne sont pas comptées. Donc, à chaque fois qu'on répare un bris pendant la période de formation, on avance un peu plus sur la période de test où, on va l'espérer bien sûr, dans un monde idéal, on devrait arriver et tout fonctionne parce qu'on va avoir fait le débogage de tout ce qui est en amont avant de s'en aller au niveau du test crucial, comme je l'ai mentionné, des tests. Et encore une fois, puis vous faites bien de le dire, oui, nous travaillons en collaboration. C'est pour ça que Yann, maintenant, le head de TNEX, est sur mon comité, avec mes directeurs, avec les gens de Michael. C'est pour avoir la même compréhension. Parce qu'avant, on avait une compréhension, TNEX en avait un autre. Là, maintenant, on veut avoir vraiment une compréhension commune pour éviter justement de vous donner des dates qu'on n'est pas en mesure de respecter, pour éviter aussi ce qu'on appelle le biais optimiste et surtout pour qu'on puisse avoir une seule parole. Moi, je veux que quand je m'en vais dans les médias, je dise quelque chose par rapport à TNEX, je veux que TNEX puisse aller dans les médias puis dire la même chose aussi. Donc, on a cette relation et malheureusement, il faut prendre le temps. Il n'y a aucun système dans le monde, on le voit, qui va être opérationnel le jour 1. Nous, on veut vraiment prendre notre temps pour bien faire les tests, mais on veut que le train soit en service le plus vite possible parce qu'on sait que c'est le désir de nos clients, puis c'est ça qu'on veut, puis c'est là-dessus qu'on est focusé.
OK, merci encore une fois pour vos mots et votre présentation. Just getting back to the business of the committee, the recommendation for item 4.2 is that the joint meeting of the Transit Commission and Light Rail Subcommittee receive the report for information. Is that received? Received. Thank you. So we'll move to adjournment. The next meeting, I understand we won't be having, of course, another joint meeting. None is planned, but the Transit Commission, I'm told, is meeting on February 8th. And then the Light Rail Subcommittee, I will consult with staff on a timing. It is not a standing committee. It doesn't meet monthly. It's not resourced to do that. But obviously the train line progress, because it is in front of us more quickly. I know members will want to get an update on that specifically. So we'll look in the new year when we would schedule, and I'll consult with the members on the timing of that. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much. Merci.
Good job, Chair. Thank you.